some point. What would happen if there was a limited supply of one of these firms? So let me assume for the moment that the number of ones plus the number of twos is greater than the number of consumers, but the number of ones is less than the number of consumers. And I'll make it simple. The number of twos is also less than the number of consumers. What would happen in that case? There are more firms out there. Remember, each firm only produces one unit. Remember that, right? Each consumer is going to consume at most one unit. Each producer can produce at most one unit. Let's assume that there are less producers than firms. I'm sorry, less producers than there are consumers of either type. But totally, there are more producers than consumers. What would the equilibrium look like? Yeah. Okay, so take my picture I just drew. What would the equilibrium look like in that case? Two types of equilibrium, or would there be a unique equilibrium? There would be a unique equilibrium. What would it look like? Well, let's think about it. These guys, in the way I drew it, consumers would prefer, if they're earning zero profits, to buy from firm 2, right? So the firm 2 clearly is going to exist in equilibrium, and all the type 2 firms are going to work or be in equilibrium. But we're going to need some type 1 firms to also come into the market to serve some of the consumers that will spill over, right? So we know these guys are going to earn zero profits. So you could take this C1 of Q, right? That would be the cost of the type 1s. The consumers are going to have to be tangent to that, right? Everybody agree? This would be, call that Q1 star, P1 star. So the type 1 firms that exist in equilibrium will earn zero profits. This will be pi equals 0. Okay? Right? Everybody agree with that? That is, some of these type 1 firms will not produce in equilibrium because there's more firms than consumers. So some of these guys are out. The guys who are out earn zero profits, and therefore the guys who are in have to earn zero profits, right? That's what competition would do. Competition would force the type 1 firms that survive to earn zero profits, just like the type 1 firms that are out who earn zero profits. You can't have an equilibrium in which the type 1 firms are making money, because all the other ones would want to come in and bid that business away and push the price down. So that's one point that's going to exist in our equilibrium. Now, the constraint faced by the type 2 firms is what? They can't make the consumers any worse off than the type 1 firms. Otherwise, the consumers would run over and buy from the type 1 firms, and there's plenty of type 1 firms out there to serve them, right? So they're constrained to offer a combination that's at least this good, right? They don't have any incentive to offer something better than that, because why? They'd be giving away profits. So they're going to find a point where they make as much money as possible, which is where one of their indifference curves is tangent to this curve. This is pi 2 equals pi 2 star. Well, that's an indifference curve for the type 2 firms that corresponds to positive profits. That is, the type 2 firms are going to earn positive profits. Oh, shucks, I drew it the wrong way. Sorry. I drew a second consumer. They got to be tangent. They're looking like this. Good point. Pi 2 equals pi 2 star. I'm getting ahead of myself. All right, so it looks like that. they got to be tangent to that consumer's indifference curve. Look like that. So this would be Q star 2, P2 star. Okay? So that is, the consumers would be indifferent from buying from these two firms, and they would produce a higher quality in this example. They would earn positive profits. Somebody said they would earn rents. Exactly. They would earn rents on their superior ability, which is their lower cost relative to type 1 firms. Okay? Everybody understand that? Yeah. No. This isn't their cost curve. This is a positive profit curve. What do their indifference curves look like? That's a good question. What do their indifference curves look like? Let's think about it. How do we talked about the consumer indifference curves, right? Let's think about firm indifference curves. What do the firm indifference curves look like? Well, we know one indifference curve of theirs is their cost curve, right? C2 of Q. That is pi 2 equals 0. Everybody agrees with that? That is the zero profit curve for these guys is just their cost curve. Because if they get a price equal to their cost, they earn zero profits. Right? So that's the zero. That we know that's one indifference curve, right? And that's the worst indifference curve we can get them on. Right? Any points down here earns negative profits. So these are positive. What do their indifference curves look like actually in this space? What does the pi equals $1 curve look like? How do you earn a pi of $1? You charge $1 more than this curve. So their curves are vertically parallel. They're just a bunch of vertically parallel curves, right? Now, that's a function of the fact that we assume they can only sell one unit of any quality. You could, in general, have a different set of indifference curves if you wanted. But, you know, for our purposes, that's good enough. So there's another indifference curve up here which has the same slope at every point, which is C2 of Q plus pi 2 equals pi 2 star, which is pi 2 equals pi 2 star, right? That is, you just add whatever that number is to the cost, and that's the indifference curve, right? So that's the curve that would be tangent here. That is, the zero profit curve would be down here someplace, right? Everybody, you see what I'm saying? Zero profit curves down here, they earn positive profits in equilibrium. Okay? Yep. There's nothing that says the only reason the guy who has more profits produced higher quality is because the way I drew it, his curve was flatter. If I had drawn this picture, C2 of Q, and this had been C1 of Q, but the consumer had been tangent down here, then I would have gotten the reverse case. I would have gotten the case where the firm earning positive profits actually was producing the lower quality product. There's nothing that says the firm that produces the higher quality product has to earn more profits. There's nothing in the economics that would tell us that. It's that this guy is better at meeting consumers' tastes, and his optimal way of meeting their tastes is meeting it with low quality. The other guy is, if he's going to meet their tastes, he's going to produce high quality, but because his costs are so high, that's actually consumers would prefer the low quality product at the other guy's cost. Okay? There's no reason it has to go one way or the other. Right? But these are the what we call inframarginal producers. That is, they're the producers who aren't on the margin of participating. These would be the marginal producers, right? The producers that are on the margin of coming into the industry. Okay? Now, in some problems, we kind of know who the low-cost producers are and who the high-cost producers are. because it kind of just comes directly out of the structure of the problem. And I'll give you an example later where it's pretty clear once we set up the problem who the low-cost producers are going to be. But more generally, it could be the low quality or high quality. Okay? Yeah.
So when there's too few type 2 consumers or firms to supply everything that the consumers want, then the consumers fall from the difference curve tangent to the type 1 firm cost curve, and
That's how we find the equilibrium, right? We sort of say, well, it's like you're searching for an equilibrium. You say, well, okay, look, the way I think about it is these are the low cost types, they're going to survive. These are the higher cost types, and there are too many of them, so they're not all going to survive. So some of these guys got to earn zero profits. Once some of them earn zero profits, all of them earn zero profits. And if they're earning zero profits, they're on their cost curve, and then I know consumers got to be maximizing subject to that. They got to be tangent to that. And then the other guys got to be maximizing subject to the consumer's constraint, so they got to go in the other direction. But you see how that works?